Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Puerto Rico full show. That's right. We have the initial research, data dive, and DFS tactics show all bundled into 1 hour show for the alternate field event this week in Puerto Rico. One of my favorite style of events. A lot of all of the attention really is on the Arnold Palmer, the main event of the week. Rightfully so, since that is where the majority of the best players in or on the PGA Tour are playing. But there's a lot of value to be had if you are paying attention to the alternate field events. So that is what we are here to help you with this evening. I'm quite excited. We got a lot to cover. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I place research at the beginning of the week regarding some tournament winners, course information, previous patterns of winners. Didn't do that this week since I am still trying to set up the stream for in terms of recovery from the crash last Sunday. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. It's going to be a humongous card, considering it's 2 tournaments and 2 tournaments worth of contests that I'll be playing. So lots of information to come out Wednesday. If you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then finally, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Really can't recommend it enough. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show as we continue the DFS talk over there. It's always very fun, informative, interactive. Again, can't recommend the article itself enough. And go show Gabe some support following over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you. I see your comment there, Derek, so I'll get to that in a moment. But please jump into chat. Would love to hear from you all. How much do you know of the Cocoa Beach, the golf course of the Puerto Rico Open? Who do you think is the favorite in the field? We are here. Everything Puerto Rico Open. I will answer some questions regarding the Arnold Palmer if there are any. But tonight I really do want to focus on the Puerto Rico Open. So would love your thoughts on the tournament. Any ideas you have in terms of style of lineups, feel free to jump in chat. Would love to hear from you all. So let's get into it. Let's do the full show. That means the research, the data, and the DFS for the Puerto Rico Open. And we are going to start as I thought we were going to. Apparently I had Microsoft Excel up. We're going to start over at WinFinder. There is no GCSA tournament fact sheet for Puerto Rico. Typically the case for the Caribbean events, particularly Corrales, Puerto Rico. Good evening, Derek. I am doing well. I'm hoping the camera decides to cooperate this evening and won't freeze. Did work on a little bit of it today. It is good to see you in chat. Much appreciated for you jumping in as you always do. We're going to take a very, very quick look in terms of the weather around Puerto Rico. You see that for Thursday, Friday, really every single day, the wind starts off very calm and then picks up in the afternoon. Does look like we might get some rain showers on Thursday and Friday. I don't want to put too much emphasis into this because in terms of super forecast, we only can get to Thursday. However, it does look like there are quite a few rain showers in the forecast for Thursday. If you are planning on playing Puerto Rico or doing any wagers with the Puerto Rico Open, feel free to shoot me a message, whether that is on social media. Reach out to me there. Reach out to me on the comments of this show, of this video. We'd be more than happy to give you the updated information that I see tomorrow. But we're only able to look at one day of a super forecast, and it looks very similar across Thursday and Friday, so I don't see a wave advantage considering I can only see the first day. But even in so, extrapolating from the extended forecast, I didn't see much there. It does look like there is some rain in the forecast, but probably not enough to delay, would be my guess. And not really a whole lot of wind to really factor it in into our considerations. We'll take a look at some wind performance for the players in the field this week, but being right on the coast of Puerto Rico, winds have been much higher in years prior. So this looks like it's going to be relatively benign by Puerto Rico standards. So anyway, there's a look at the extended forecast for the Puerto Rico Open. We're going to now go to Fantasy National. And there are a few players that I need to star. Sam Stevens, Andrew Novak, Grayson Sigg, and Jackson Suber. Those four are not in the field for Puerto Rico. Sam Stevens and Andrew Novak are at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Grayson Sigg and Jackson Suber withdrew earlier in the week. So if those four players come up this evening and you're wondering why they are starred, they are not in the field. Okay, with no GCSAA tournament fact sheet, not a whole lot in terms of research, in terms of an initial research that we can do. I will tell you that this course is very long. We'll take a look at the course breakdown here very quickly. The par fives there are two fairly short par fives and two very long par fives. We have a 547 and a 535 par five on the front nine. The back nine, 600 and 630 yards. So there's quite a bit of length here at Cocoa Beach for the Puerto Rico Open, and the par threes are long, much like Bay Hill. We have 203, 236, 192, and 202. So long par threes, also quite prevalent around Cocoa Beach. Saw Jake Knapp on the odds board in DraftKings, but didn't see him in DFS. Is he playing? He is not here. I would have thought he is at the Arnold Palmer, because I know he is not here, as you can see. But if he's not at the Arnold Palmer, then he's just not playing this week. That's what I have for you, because I know he's not in the Puerto Rico field. And I've spent all of today focused on Puerto Rico, so I don't have perfect info regarding the API. I'll be working on that all tomorrow. To finalize our look at the research in terms of the Puerto Rico Open, I got confused. Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that is a little frustrating with Fantasy National. For all of its great things, it is not a perfect service, considering they still have Sam Stevens and Andrew Novak in the field for Puerto Rico. It is what it is. You just kind of do the best that you can to maneuver around it. I went ahead and took the liberty of adding all this up from Fantasy National. This course is over 7,500 yards, and there's quite a bit of water in play. Not necessarily the coast, although some of the holes do run alongside the coast of the Gulf of America or the Gulf of Mexico. But there are a lot of water hazards like ponds and some lakes throughout the course. Several bunkers, although most of the bunkerage is guarding the greens. So the course, in terms of total yardage, is over 7,500 yards. So we're going to be looking at long course metrics this week, or in terms of Puerto Rico. We'll take a quick look at the rest of this page view. See strokes gained by hole by par. You see no strokes gained by shot type. Again, with no shot link, we don't get any data in terms of putting, approach, anything like that. So we'll have to make a lot of inferences tonight. But strokes gained by hole by par, with 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s, you would expect professionals to take advantage of the par 5s the most. Although this is very, very close. You can see the y-axis here. I mean, the par 3s and the par 5s are separated by hundredths of a point. So not a whole lot. However, as you move up the leaderboard, for your top 5 finishers, par 3s really start to lag. And then for your winners, the par 4s actually overtake the par 5s, which is quite unique. The par 3s lag quite a bit in terms of importance. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we move forward this evening, how much emphasis we want to put into par 3s. Probably not very much, if at all. We're going to have most of our focus in par 4s and par 5s. Hole composition, I talked about the par 3s. Much like Bay Hill, they are long. Generally the most difficult holes on the course. The 203 here plays 6/100ths of a shot over par, 6/100ths of a shot, 7/100ths of a shot, and right at par. And you can see there are a few scoring opportunities around Puerto Rico. The par 5 second plays a half a shot under par, 4/10ths, 2/10ths, almost a quarter of a shot. But this isn't really a birdie fest. It's not challenging by any means, but it's not really a birdie fest. Most winning scores get to about 20, up into the upper teens or minus 20, which is you could classify as easy, but certainly nothing to the level of, say, a TPC Craig Ranch or an American Express like the Stadium course. Not a whole lot of great birdie and especially eagle chances. The par 3 is generally the toughest part of this course. There is a short, not drivable par 4 measuring at 386. And then majority of the par 4s, half of them fall between 400 and 450, with the remaining 4 falling between 450 and 500. A very unique setup here in terms of length of par 5s. 2 par 5s from 500 to 550, 2 par 5s from 600 to 650, none from 550 to 600. Speaking to the difficulty or ease of the course, 20% birdies, 13.5% bogeys, a few doubles if players find the water. So you'll get more scores that are under par than over par, as you can see by the historic cut line, generally hovering right around even, which would be average. Now last year was easy. The wind was down, played very easy, the easiest it had at -3. You can see if the wind really picks up, it can get as high as +3, +2. I mean, a long course, it can be difficult. I don't see that happening this week based on that forecast. Driving accuracy, a little bit less than the average tour event. I wouldn't be too concerned with that. Most players are able to freewheel driver here just because the fairways are so wide, as is the case at most Caribbean resort style courses. Greens much higher than the average tour event. Scrambling is quite easy around Cocoa Beach, and there's not a lot of 3 putts. Putting is not very difficult around Cocoa Beach. So there's a look at Cocoa Beach in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. We'll do a couple of very, very quick, very high overview, high level views in terms of strokes gained total, performance on a couple of filters, and then we'll really just kind of dig into the data. First off, we're going to look at long courses. Again, this course is over 7,500 yards. Not necessarily the easiest. It did play very easy last year, but really that was that was not the norm. 3 rounds of average and an easy the year before. You even had a round of difficult in 2022. You'll get a few rounds of easy, but mostly it's about average most of the time. 2017 was easy, but most of the time this plays about average. You saw the cut line basically at zero or at even par, which would be right at average. So first thing we'll look at, long course performance. Your best players going back to the beginning of 2024 on long courses in the field this week at the Puerto Rico Open: Hayden Springer, Kevin Tway, Matty Schmid, Chan Kim, Norman Xiong, Austin Cook, Aaron Baddeley, Vince Whaley, Trace Crow, and Ryan Gerard. Again, Sam Stevens and Andrew Novak are not in this field. They are at the API. Just because it is Caribbean and it is right on the coast, we will take a look at moderate and windy conditions just to make sure we cover our bases here, because the wind can pick up, especially in the afternoon. So your top performers in moderate and windy conditions since the beginning of last year: Chan Kim, Chad Ramey, Wesley Bryan, Kevin Tway, Bud Cauley, Rico Hoey, Aaron Baddeley, Santiago de la Fuente, Patrick Fishburne, Adam Schenk, and Michael Thorbjornsen. Again, some of these guys like Wesley Bryan, Kevin Tway, they've got so few rounds that you don't want to put a whole lot of stock into it. But in the 1 or 2 rounds, 2 tournaments, I should say, that they had moderate or windy conditions, they did play well. I would put much more stock into players like Chan Kim, Chad Ramey, these guys who have got, a solid amount of rounds in that regard. Okay, with that, let's go to Microsoft Excel and let's just get into the data portion of Puerto Rico. Again, no shot link, so we don't get any strokes gained data here. We'll start with driving and greens. And because of the length of the course, distance matters. It just flat out matters. We've got one very low outlier, one very high outlier. Those basically cancel out. This is one of the courses that demands distance, even though it's not very widely known among casual PGA Tour, golf fans. But Puerto Rico. Sorry, I had it across. Puerto Rico, 96% more important, almost double the importance of the average full field course event. Players free wheel driver here. And the longer you are, the better off you are. Considering a lot of the holes, there's not a whole lot of trees, very little trees really. The only danger for players off the tee is if they happen to find any of the water hazards that are around, and I think there's about 8 to 10 holes with water danger. So players just kind of free wheel driver, which leads you to think that off the tee would matter because distance is a big factor, but so are fairways. Again, we have this one extremely low outlier, but you remove that and fairways quite heightened in importance. So we're going to have a lot of importance in off the tee when we go to the DFS portion later on in the show. So we're going to look at a lot of distance off the tee mostly, but we're going to focus on the distance because these fairways are fairly wide and forgiving. I don't do much with greens for these Caribbean style events because they're generally easy to hit. They're pretty large. Instead, I take a long look at scoring, as in opportunities, which we don't get a look at opportunities in years past. We just get birdies and bogeys. Again, with this tournament being about average, in terms of importance, I would tend to lean birdies gained. Birdies are better gained because there are a few eagles, but not a whole lot. But I'm going to tell you right now, the mixed condition model has both of these in it because, again, it plays right at average. So players are going to have to shoot some pretty low scores to contend, but they're also going to have to be adept at avoiding bogeys because there is trouble around Cocoa Beach. And then moving to the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, we saw this in the course breakdown. The par 3s are just quite mitigated, surprisingly to me, but they just are. And they're pretty evenly split among the three ranges. So if we did anything at all with par 3s, it would be total. I'm not in love with it because, as you see here, this is a 1.17, whereas some of the individual lengths of par 4s are just higher than that by themselves, not to mention just par 4s in general. Par 4s have been very, very consistent. Despite this one low outlier, they've been pretty darn consistent. But you see all of the strokes gained in par 4s around Cocoa Beach are in these two lengths. So that's where we're going to look. We're basically going to ignore the shorter par 4. It just doesn't contribute a whole lot year over year. If it happens to this year, I'll be weak and wrong to that, but I'm just going by historical norms. And then par 5s, again, the very unique setup here that they don't have any par 5s that measure 550 to 600. 2 in this range, and they never bump it over 550. 2 in this range, and they never bump it below 600. So we'll see that in the mixed condition model. I just looked at these two ranges. Again, no shot link, so we don't get any proximity data. My guess is you would want to look at long irons, but I can't confirm that. I just can't. I would think that might be accentuated even more so this year with the rain that's in the forecast down in Puerto Rico, but with no shot link data, it's really all conjecture. I just want to go based on the data that is available. So there's a look at some of the deeper dive, or at least the deeper dive data, or into the data for Puerto Rico, or at least what we can get access to with no shot link. We'll head back to Fantasy National, do a quick look at some of the players in some of these key metrics. I'm going to remove the moderate and the windy filter. We're going to look at long courses over 7,400, which is what defined in Fantasy National as a long course. On long courses, your top off the tee players in the field at Puerto Rico: Rico Hoey, Alejandro Tosti, Tim Whiting, Joseph Bramlett, Ryan Brim, Nick Hardy, Patrick Fishburne, Ryan Gerard, Norman Xiong, Chan Kim, and Anders Albertson. If we remove the long course, we just look at irons. Your top iron players in the field this week down in Puerto Rico: Henrik Norlander, Lipsky, Norgard, Ricky Castillo, Chan Kim, Carl Phillips. I believe you mentioned him, 2 weeks ago for Mexico, Derek. So his irons have been very good. You see he's been very poor otherwise, but his irons have been very good. Ryan Gerard, Wesley Bryan, Justin Hastings. Rosner, Chad Rainey, and Blades Brown round out the tie for 10th, considering Jackson Suber is not in the field. Nothing to do with putting. These are paspalum greens, but the only paspalum data we have is from Vedanta. So I don't want to go on to that because it doesn't include this course in its sample size. So no paspalum putting, or no putting that we're looking at. Not a whole lot to do with the tournament history either, just because tournament history doesn't really matter much here at Cocoa Beach. Most of the winners, other than say Bryce Garnett, who's historically played well, most of the winners have been first-time players here. Bryce Garnett has won. You see Ryan Brim has been pretty middling, and then wins in 2022. Victor Hovland won in 2020 and never played the course before. 2021, it's escaping me. Course history just doesn't contribute a whole lot. For example, most players that perform well here, this is kind of a stepping stone. We don't want to discount it. For example, like Bryce Garnett, who's historically played well. Vince Whaley, 3 top 20s, has played well. We don't want to discount or take anything away from players who have played year over year here and played well. But I'm not putting a whole lot of stock. Sorry, I got an itch there. Not putting a whole lot of stock into course history. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. It's good to see you this week. Sorry there were no videos last week and no shows. I had a very unexpected week off considering my computer crashed. It died. So that was fun. That was exactly the F word I was using as well. And that's why some of the settings are quite different. That's why it's more zoomed in on me and hopefully the background, because I'm still working on a skeletal setup basically after purchasing a new computer. But I appreciate you jumping in chat this evening, and just wanted to give you that info of why there were no shows from last week. So hopefully the audio quality is good on your end. The picture quality seems to be fine. My camera's cooperating so far, knock on wood. And yeah, hopefully you are ready for a big week this week, considering we have a double tournament week with the API and Puerto Rico. All right, so there's our strokes gained. I'm just going to cover a couple of things here just very, very quickly, and then we're going to get into the DFS portion of the show. We'll look at distance, and distance when driver is forced in players' hands on long courses. Your top players in terms of distance in the field this week down in Puerto Rico. Cameron Champ, who is on the Corn Ferry Tour this year, but he is teeing it up down in Puerto Rico. Chris Goddard, Toasty, Joseph Bramlett, Hayden Springer, Pearson Cootie, Norman Xiong, Garrick Higo, Tim Whiting, Rico Hoey. And then we will take a look at par 4 scoring and maybe a little bit of par 5. Your top par 4 performers, and again, we're really focused on 2 ranges here, 400 to 500. So I'm going to sort on par 4s, but we're really looking at these 2 ranges here. These 2. So somebody like Ryan Gerard, 2nd and 3rd. Ricky Castillo, 7th and 8th. Probably an honorable mention here to Justin Hastings, 7th and 21st. Grayson Sigg's not in the field, dummy. The amateur, Blades Brown, 1st on the 400 to 450, and good, not necessarily excellent, but good, 450 to 500. Adams Vinson, very good at both lengths of par 4s here. So again, I've sorted on total par 4s, but we're really looking at these 2 ranges here, 400, 450, 455. And then lastly, we'll take a look at par 5 scoring. And there's no way for me to highlight it conveniently. We're looking at 500 to 550, 600 to 650. There are no par 5s, 550 to 600 here. So if we sort, we're looking at players like Norgard, who's good in both. Maybe not elite, but good in both, 23rd, 18th. Adam Shank, top 20 in both lengths. Jeremy Paul, 3rd and 21st. Hayden Springer. Joseph Bramlett. Matty Schmid, maybe to a lesser extent. Brant Snedeker, 13th and 20th. So those are the players in a quick view that have been good at both links of the par fives. All right. So with that, we've made it halfway through the show. Let's just go ahead and get into the DFS portion, because I will definitely be playing some lineups, doing some contests for the Puerto Rico Open. So let me exit out of the historic conditions, the breakdown, the mixed condition model that I've made for Puerto Rico this week. As I mentioned, when we went through Microsoft Excel with all the importance in distance, fairways were quite important as well. I got 20% off the tee on long courses to start our mixed condition model. It is the metric that has the most weight this week. In fact, if we take just a very, very quick look and go through the years of the players who have won this. Bryce Garnett, kind of an outlier. He's not really all that long, not known for his off the tee game. He's generally more accurate, but he did have a very good Cognizant Classic last week. He's a little bit of an outlier. 2023 was Nico Echeverria, who's starting to make waves on the PGA Tour. You see Akshay Bhatia, Michael Kim. These guys can, move it a little bit, especially Bhatia. Harry Hall, Gerard Stevens. These guys move it off the tee. We'll go to 2022. Ryan Brim, big hitter, at least moves it off the tee. On these weaker field tournaments, do you focus more on ownership or stats? I focus on stats, and I'll explain why when we get to the DFS port, or get into my rankings and such. Very few players in the tournament, so I'm not sure if I just fade the public. 6K range looks so weak. Not sure if I'm supposed to avoid that altogether. That is one way to think about it, considering you're in an alternate field event. The 6Ks can be, dry of talent, if you will. There are a couple of 6Ks at the Puerto Rico that I do like, but that is one way to think about it, because generally the pricing is pretty competitive, because you usually don't have any 11 or 12Ks. You're mostly in the lower 10s, so you don't have to go into the 6s if you don't have to. That's one way to do it. But we'll get into that here momentarily. I just want to show you the style of players that have won here. Ryan Brim, again, big hitter off the tee. You see Chris Goddard, a big hitter off the tee, who finished top 10. 2021, it was escaping me. He's Brandon Grace. So he was much more known for his long irons. 2020 was Victor. Grillo can move it off the tee a little bit. So Johnny Vegas, very much known for his driving, off the tee prowess. So those are the types of players that have generally performed well here. So that's why I have 20% off the tee using the filtered long courses. 15% approach is kind of my default, my go-to, especially since we don't have shot link. Approach is going to be important. If you wanted to get maybe a little bit more technical or exact, you could probably look at some long proximity. I don't like doing that without the actual data, because we don't have shot link. So I'm just going to stick with approach. 10% driving distance. And then, as I was mentioning, because this course is neither easy nor difficult, it just plays right around average most of the time, I've got a lot in scoring. Instead of looking at proximity, I'm looking at opportunities. Players that give themselves plenty of chances with good iron shots, and using the filter long courses. 10% birdies or better, 5% bogey avoidance. So a lot in terms of scoring spread out among these three metrics. And then to round out the mixed condition model, I went 10% each in the length of, or the specific length of par fours, 5% each in the specific length of par 5s. You'll notice that I don't have any par 3s. I did fancy or toy with the idea of putting some sand saves in here because most of the bunkerage on the course is protecting greens. Decided not to do that, so I could be a little weak to that. Of course, we don't have any past palm putting in here. But this is the mixed condition model that I landed on for the Puerto Rico Open. So now we'll go to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings for the Puerto Rico Open. Again, quick reminder, and for your information, if you're a new viewer, quick reminder, if you're a returning viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank is a straight analytical numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just covered, the metrics and percentages in that. Course value is a way to give a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course in the past 5 years. Something like the API at Bay Hill, which is pretty darn predictive and usually leads to success, or past performance leads to future success. I would weight that higher than what I do here, so this is a very little in terms of the total weight in my rankings. And the third criteria is normally projected ownership. Having said that, because this is an alternate field event, it's very hard to find projected ownerships. So we're going to have to do a lot of conjecture this evening regarding that. I certainly have my opinions on who I think will be popular, but we just don't know. Just full transparency, I tried to look at the projected ownerships per Fantasy National. There were 14 members of Fantasy National, 14 that had looked at the Puerto Rico Open. That's just not nearly enough to gather legitimate data. So I just leave it blank. Again, if you plan on playing some Puerto Rico contests this week, feel free to shoot me a message tomorrow over on social media or in the comments. I will be more than happy to give you the updated data as it comes in. We might not get it. So it all kind of just depends on how many people plan on looking at the Puerto Rico. So with that, the guy you mentioned the other day, Tim Whiting, is up there on your model. He is. A lot of that has to do with the length. So my rankings for the Puerto Rico Open go as such. Adam Schenk is my number 1 player. He only has 1 poor statistic across here, and it's the longest of long par 5s. He's also been pretty decent in his multiple tries to Puerto Rico. Chan Kim comes in second in my rankings. Joseph Bramlett third. Rico Hoey and Nick Hardy round out my top 5. Norman Xiong, 6,600 Norman Xiong. 6th, Hayden Springer, Ryan Gerard, Lonto Griffin, and Henrik Norlander round out my top 10. All right. I don't want to go too much into it because I do want to make some lineups and whatnot. So let's just go ahead and go into the price board. And even though we don't have any ownerships, we can probably get a gauge on how our fellow contestants, those that are playing the Puerto Rico Open, how they're going to go in terms of lineups. So in the 10Ks, we only have 2 players. And to your point, Derek, this is why a lot of times the 6Ks are just avoided altogether, because you don't have to go into them. Even using a 10K, you don't have to go into them. 10-2 and 10,000 even is all we have this week for Puerto Rico. Despite the rankings, I like both of these players. Don't get me wrong. But despite the rankings here, I'm actually slightly higher on Norgard than I am Gerard. You see, Gerard doesn't have a lot of distance, especially on the longest of courses. He has struggled with giving himself a lot of opportunities on long courses. Having said that, he did top 15 the Puerto Rico Open in the one time he played it. I just think this is a good fit for Norgard. So I like Norgard the most of these two, but I am going to use them both. Absolutely. I don't think I will ever put both of them in a lineup together, because then you really are having to go down into the 6Ks. But I do like both of these players. I lean Norgard of the two. Moving into the 9s. This is real easy for me. I don't have any idea who this player is. You see no statistics on the PGA Tour, so that's easy for me. That's a full fade. I could be missing out on a big talent. I just don't have anything to go on. Otherwise, in the 9Ks, I would have to imagine Chan Kim's going to be pretty popular, but this is chalk I won't be able to get away from. I imagine Patrick Fishburne is going to be very, very chalky, and this is going to be chalk that, this is going to be an easy fade for me, because I like Chan Kim a lot. Of course, I'm going to use my number one player in Adam Schenk, so I'm just not going to use a whole lot here in the 9Ks. Fishburne's going to get some ownership, I would think. Bud Cauley is fine, but I'm just really high on these two players. I do expect Chan Kim to get some ownership. This is the chalk I will eat. So in the 9s, I might sprinkle some Kevin Roy, but I'm not in love with it. Might sprinkle some Bud Cauley. I'm not in love with it. But I'm using a whole lot of Chan Kim and a whole lot of Adam Schenk. Moving into the 8s. Particularly the upper 8s, I don't really have a whole lot of interest. Again, Bryce Garnett has played very, very well at Puerto Rico. He's the defending champion. He's coming off a top 15 at the Cognizant. He's probably going to get some popularity. He was rated really low last year for me for the Puerto Rico Open. I'll miss again. If Garnett plays well, I'll just miss again, because I'm all about off the tee. His irons haven't been great so far in 2025. He does avoid bogeys pretty well and plays shorter par 5s well, but again, I'll take the chance and I'll miss. Adams Vincent, this doesn't feel like a good fit for him. Long course, he generally struggles. You think about his win at the RSM, that's a very short course. Instead, any interest I have in the 8s starts in the mid and goes lower. Rico Hoey. Again, I was really high on him in Mexico. Didn't work out. I'll go back to the well here in a very similar style field like Mexico, like the fall. He was playing really, really well. Number one off the tee player when it's or on long courses. Gets a lot of birdies on long courses. I really like Hoey this week. He'd probably be fairly popular. Somebody that I'm hoping is not popular, because I think he's going to be pretty good, is Matthew Jordan. A lot of people might not know much about Matthew Jordan. We don't have a whole lot of data here, as you can see. But let's look at the data we do have. Par 4 is 400 to 450, 8th. 450 to 500, 6th. These par 5s, 5th. He doesn't have a statistic outside the top 10 of the ones we've been able to gather. And let me bring us back to Fantasy National just very, very quickly. Matthew Jordan at 8,400. Not very known on the PGA Tour. He is well known on the DP World Tour. Top 10 the Open last year. Top 10 the Open the year before that. I'm going to be nice, round up. Top 25 the Scottish Open last year. This guy is a very, very, very talented player. Again, I would not worry about these iron numbers because it's all from one tournament. I'm hoping he's pretty darn unique. I'm hoping Matthew Jordan's pretty darn unique because I'm going to use quite a bit of him, hoping he is the pivot in the area. Because he is a big talent. He's quite a talent worldwide. I don't hate Matty Schmidt either. Despite the fact that his off the tee numbers are pretty poor, these are the style of events he plays well. These Caribbean events, distance, plenty of distance, gets plenty of birdies, especially on long courses. He'll have to clean up his par fours, but I don't hate Matty Schmidt either. And then Antoine Rosner, I'm going to use quite a bit of as well in the eights. So again, quick recap of the eights. I'm basically out on the upper part of the eights. Just want no part of this. I'm going to use a lot of Rico Hoey. I'm going to use a lot of Matthew Jordan, hoping he's unique. I don't really know if he will be or not, but that's my hope. I will use some Matty Schmidt, and I'll use some Rosner as well. Moving into the upper sevens, Hayden Springer rates out very well. I was very high on him. I've been high on him a couple times. One worked out, one didn't. Number one birdie or better game player on long courses. Plenty of distance. I like what he's bringing to the table in terms of a fit for Puerto Rico, and he finished third here last year. So I like Hayden Springer quite a bit. Joseph Bramlett is quite interesting. He's played pretty well here in multiple tries. He's all about, the length off the tee, fourth in both total off the tee and distance. But what I can tell you, he is team no putt. After targeting Joseph Bramlett in a few of these style events and some of the longer courses on the PGA Tour when he gets starts, he's not a very good putter. So that is his downfall. He rates out extremely well. I'm not as high on Bramlett as it would suggest, but I will definitely use him. Wesley Bryan, I'll probably use a time or two. I know he's very popular, but I generally think of Wesley Bryan more on shorter technical tracks, not resort style tracks. So not too crazy about it. I like Ricky Castillo again. I liked him in Mexico. He played pretty well down in Mexico. Don't ignore Henrik Norlander. He's been very good. And he's played here, I think, 4 of the past 5 years. He's been very good. Not as much in terms of off the tee prowess, but you see the irons second. He's just a very, very good iron player. Very good long iron player. Probably why he performs well here. Toasty's worth a look, although he has been really bad here. So there might be something with this course he just doesn't like. The irons have been dreadful so far this year, but you want to talk about prodigious distance, that's Toasty. So he's worth a look. And then, going into the lower sevens, take a look at ADDC, Adrian Dumont Deschessart. Finished 6th here last year. Has been playing decently on the Corn Ferry Tour. Plenty of opportunities. Has enough distance when it's mandatory. It's worth a look. I was surprised to see him rate so low. I'm not nearly as high on Nick Hardy, but Carl Phillips. You've mentioned him before, Derek. 7th in irons. Now, a lot of his other stuff leaves some stuff to be desired. But he's been very good with the irons lately. He has not played any long courses. So we don't know how he's going to take to that, but I'm willing to bet on the irons. I'm willing to think about the irons, especially if he's been so hot lately with them. And then at the very bottom of the 7,000s, you mentioned Tim Whiting. Again, all about the length. I'm going to use the amateur Blades Brown. I like his game a lot. I think this suits well for him. Irons have been good. Shorter par 4s, he's been good. It's right off your screen. He's 6th. Only being 17, he might have some trouble with the distance, but I'm willing to take that chance. So Blades Brown is somebody that I'm quite interested in at 7,000. And then there are a couple of players in the 6Ks that if you're wanting to get greedy up top and play a Norgard and a Chan Kim, or maybe you want to go double 10s, There are a couple of players here in the 6Ks that I'm pretty high on. First is Justin Hastings. He's been pretty good to start 2025. Top 10 in irons in this field. He's got a lot of distance. He will have to clean up his performance on the longest of long par fives. But you see the short par fives, he plays very well. I do like Justin Hastings. If you think the wind is going to pick up quite a bit, or if we see that the forecast changes and the wind is really supposed to pick up, then I will give a nod to Scott Piercy. He's generally played these Caribbean events well, mostly because he plays very well in the wind. And then the other name I want to mention is Norman Xiong. Big time talent. Hasn't really shown it on the PGA Tour yet, as you can see with his lack of irons so far in 2025. But again, a lot of distance off the tee. He gets plenty of birdies. He's actually been okay at avoiding bogeys as well. So if you're getting really greedy up top, I don't hate Norman Xiong at 6,600. Okay. No tiers contest that I know of for Puerto Rico. So let's go ahead and see if we can try to manufacture what we think might be a chalky lineup. And then I'll show you the kind of lineups that I've been basically building. I do think Chan Kim is going to be really popular this week. And Adam Schenk might be as well. But generally speaking, balanced lineups are the go-to in alternate events. Just because, like you mentioned, Derek, like 6Ks, there isn't a whole lot down here that people are familiar with. And players, or our fellow contestants, generally try to beat the 10Ks since these players aren't known for being 10K guys. So I do think Chan Kim's going to be pretty popular. This could be Adam Schenk. It could be Bud Cauley. I fully expect Patrick Fishburne to be very popular as well. Adam Svensson might get some love just because he's more of a household name, having been on the PGA Tour. I want no part of Adam Svensson. If he's in this, maybe. I could see Rico Hoey having some ownership as well. Thorbjornsen, I would have to think, would be pretty popular. Joseph Bramlett might be in here as well. Wesley Bryan might be in here, just being a popular style player. And then probably Alejandro Tosti would be my best guess as to somebody in the mid sevens that would get some attention based on the Latino narrative and whatnot, and big hitter on a long course. So that's my best guess as to what a chalky lineup would look like. Again, I could be off with this, but this is just from my experience in these alternate field events in years past. That's what lineups generally tend to look like. Sub in a player here and there. So how I've been going about it, first thing is you can try to beat the chalky lineups by finding your leverage point on one or two players. Like, I love Chan Kim. I'm going to use Chan Kim. But instead of Patrick Fishburne, this could be Adam Schenk. Or you could just drop down and go to the eights, which is what I've been doing in my balanced lineups. Like, I like Rico Hoey, but I spent quite a bit of time talking about Matthew Jordan, who I'm going to be using probably quite a bit. Not sure if you talked about this, but is Norlander going to be chalky? Hope not, because he's hitting the ball well. My guess is he will be, but a good shout there, Derek, on Norlander. Where I know he's somewhere up in here, or at least I thought. If you knew there he is, 75. Yeah, he's going to be probably pretty popular, would be my guess. He was somebody that you could easily fit into that chalky lineup we just did because he generally plays these style of events well. If I had to guess, he will be. And there's nothing wrong with taking one of those players. I mean, you see, I started this lineup with Chan Kim. I have Rico Hoey in here. But you got to find one or two players. You got to find your Joe Highsmith. You got to find your Brian Campbell that is going to break it open for you. For me, I'm hoping it's Matthew Jordan, Antoine Rosner. I'm going to use a little bit as well. I don't know how unique he'll be, but I really like Hayden Springer. And then to round this lineup out, yeah, I mean, you can probably take a Henrik Norlander. I mean, this is the way you would try to beat those chalkier balanced builds. You know, your Matthew Jordan instead of maybe a Rico Hoey or a Thorbjornsen, Rosner instead of a Thorbjornsen, or Joseph Bramlett, who I think is going to be pretty popular as well. So that's one style that you can do, and I'll do my fair share of balanced lineups where I'm trying to beat the chalk, mostly with Matthew Jordan. I will, venture down here. It might not be Norlander. It might be Ricky Castillo. I'll use Carl Phillips a little bit as well as my bottom player, but just trying to get you and give you an idea on how you would go about it. The other way, and this is the contrarian way to play these alternate field events, is to go in the 6Ks because they really get forgotten. I gave you a couple names to really, really think about. Justin Hastings, I like a lot this week. Norman Xiong. If the wind picks up, Scott Piercy. But let's go with Norman Xiong, considering he is the cheapest, which lets us get as much up here at top that we can. Again, I like both of these players. I'm going to use both of these players. I slightly lean Norgard of the two, so I'm going to choose him. Again, most of my lineups would use Chan Kim here. Nothing wrong with Adam Schenk. I'm going to use Adam Schenk plenty as well. And we still have 8,000 per player. So we could easily squeeze in an 8 here. Maybe even, probably can't squeeze in Chan Kim and Schenk would be my guess. Yeah, we could. You'd be much more in the lower 7s. So I might have a lineup or two like that. But I really more so like trying to get some of these 8s in here. Again, Rico Hoey, Matthew Jordan, Matty Schmidt. I haven't talked much about, but Lonto Griffin is fine. Rosner. I'm highlighting Matthew Jordan, hoping he's unique because I really believe in the talent. And we still have 7,800 here. You can go Hayden Springer. If you're really high on a Joseph Bramlett, maybe you go Joseph Bramlett. And then I would use like Ricky Castillo. And you're leaving quite a bit of money on the table here by going Norman Xiong. Like, look, you don't even have to go into the 6Ks going Norgard and Schenk. Like, you can bottom out at 7,000 Blades Brown or Tim Whiting, who you mentioned, Derek. Like, you don't have to go into the 6Ks to do it. But you're going to gain just that much more leverage on your opponents if you're willing to, and that's why I highlighted a couple of those 6K plays. So those are the two ways that you can go about building your lineups for these alternate field events. I generally like doing this way more because I'm not scared to go down for a Norman Xiong. I'm not afraid to go to a Justin Hastings. I won't do double 6K. That's a little bit too wild even for me. And I like to get wild sometimes, but that's a little bit wild for me. But there's enough here in the low 7s that you can go like a 6K and Carl Phillips at 7,000, or excuse me, Blades Brown at 7,000. Carl Phillips at 7,200. Toasty at 74 is fine. And then, squeeze in a whole lot up here. Like if we go Phillips, you might be able to go from Bramlett to, Rosner. And still be well under the price. So the key is to find your 2 or 3 core studs that you think that you're confident is going to top 10 or top 15 that tournament. And then, try to find some uniqueness off of that. That's what I have for you all in terms of the Puerto Rico Open. Again, reach out to me tomorrow if you're wanting an update on the forecast, if you're wanting an update on the ownerships. I can't guarantee that the ownerships will come in. It all depends on how many members of Fantasy National take a look at Puerto Rico. I'll do the best I can because there were only 14 members that had looked at it, about a half an hour before the show this evening. But if you are playing DFS contests or making any wagers, again, I mentioned this last night. The favorite at Puerto Rico is, I think he's dropped to 18-1, but it was 20-1. That was the favorite, the lowest odds. There is a lot of value to be had in these alternate field events if you're willing to put in the work. And that's what I'm hoping that I've shared a little bit with you all this evening. Thanks to Derek and Phil for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Hopefully this is going to be a big week with the double tournament setup. So thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers that you've made this week for the Puerto Rico Open, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Puerto Rico Open, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Arnold Palmer DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.